Hello, everybody, and welcome to the session on work with variable data and C# console applications. So my name is Paul Bullock. I'm a modern workplace architect in Avanade, so that means I go out and I build solutions for clients. Typically, this will involve quite a lot of code, so a variety of languages and things like that. But I predominantly work in the Microsoft 365 space, offering a range of solutions to clients. And I've done this for a number of years now. So I've been working with SharePoint, for example, for nearly 16 years now. So and there was a variety of things we can do with it. There's lots of like development, there's architectural designs and stuff like that. So that's a little bit about me. But hello everybody and welcome. And I'd love to switch over to Daniel. Daniel, how are you?
Hey, good morning, everyone, or good evening, or good night. It's a good pleasure to be able to be here, and I'm so happy to share knowledge between each other. I'm Daniel, Microsoft MVP in AI and developer technologies. I work as a software engineer and also as a developer advocate, and always it's a good pleasure to be able to participate in this type of spaces because it's always a good time to learn something new. And in this case, we have a new certification about C Sharp, and
Nice.
it's a good training to start this path.
Nice. That sounds cool. So I'm just going to switch to the next slide. So I also want to say hello to our moderator, Matt Suscoop. So he's in the background, so hopefully answering your questions on the chat. So hi, Matt. How you doing? Hope you're well.
Hey, greetings from Matt.
So Daniel, do you want to talk a little bit about this slide?
Yeah, in this case, we have a new foundational C Sharp certification, in this case with Microsoft and Free Code Camp. And this is a full path of learning to learn all the topics about this certification. And in this case, for today, for example, we have this session to talk about work with variable data in C Sharp console applications. In this case, we will see examples, demos, and some scenarios that we can apply in our console applications.
No, that's cool. They've got this camp, and as far as I understand it, all of the modules within this course are in that camp space as well. So you can get access to all of the resources that it provides, which is super cool. And then you can then take that exam afterwards to get that certification, which is awesome.
Yeah, also the exercises and some challenges. In this case, some like real scenarios to practice the concepts and be ready to take the certification as well.
No, that's good. I always find that when I'm learning, I always like to try and go hands-on with the code as quickly as possible. So do a little bit of reading about how the technology works, and then get straight to that keyboard, straight to Visual Studio Code, and play with how to get started. So that's super cool that they've got those the challenges in place as well.
Yep. In this case, this session is for that, to learn about that, and we can have this like an interview section. In this case, you can say hello, hi in the chat, and through the presentation also. If you have questions, comments, we can do that. You can put in the chat and have that interaction too, to have that communication in the session.
Absolutely. There's no such thing as a silly question. So if you've got anything that you want to ask during the session, absolutely post in those comments, and we'll do our best to answer those questions as well, which is super cool. So learning objectives for today. So you're on part 4 of this course, so you've managed to survive through 3 parts of this course already, and these learn lives, which is super cool. So today we're going to be learning about how to familiarize yourself with different types of variables, so delve into a bit more detail. What are they, how they work, and why you need to use them in your code. We'll also then move on to exploring how you can convert between the types. So we'll delve into a bit more detail about switching between one type and another, why you would do that in certain circumstances, and how C# can provide some help for you to be able to do that, and pointers in the development experience as well. We then got helper methods with arrays. So you can have arrays of strings, for example, and there's a series of helper methods that help you sort those arrays into specific ordering. So we'll delve into that, and then we'll go into formatting data with your output. So taking strings, for example, information into those and present those in a way in your console application as well. Before I get started, I assume that everyone knows how to get started with a console app. Is that so? Should I assume that that is the case? So you have a console app to start with. So if you've reached part 4 and you're still learning, there are prerequisites on the MS Learn site to get started. But you can find that as well. But if you want to be able to spin a new console app very quickly, you can go to command line, assuming you've got the tools installed, and then you run .NET new console, and then that will scaffold out a new console app for you, so you can sort of run through it with that. So hopefully you've got that in place, and you'll be able to run through this as well. Try things out as we progress through this session.
Yep. And with that in mind, we are ready to start with the first topic of this session. In this particular case, choose the correct data type in your C# code. In this case, to explore the different type of data that we have and the different scenarios that we can contemplate to use, for example, one type of data or one another type of data.
Nice. So let's delve into a bit more detail there.
So yeah, as a general way, we can consider different type of data here. For example, int, long, double, bool, char, string. It all the type data has different type that we can consider here. For example, 200 numbers or characters in strings, or also, for example, booleans to have like the true value or false value. But the most important thing here is how can we use this type of data. In this case, we can consider here like a specific sizes. For example, hey, if we have a short number or a long number, we can consider different types of data here.
Yeah, and just to sort of break into that, so like integers, these are whole numbers, so there's no decimal points after that. You've got long, obviously, which is the large numbers that you can get. You've then got float and double, which are the sort of fractional numbers. So with double going into a bit more decimal digits, so a bit more specific. And again, like Daniel said, Boolean, so bool. You might hear it referring to into a few places. These have true or false states. So Boolean can either be true or false. You got character, char, which is a single character with that as well. And then you've got the string, which can be a whole range of sort of characters all strung together.
Yep. And to explore a little more about this, we can go to the next one and see a demo. For example, in this case, the different values that we can have in our apps. If we go to Visual Studio Code in this moment, in the other screen, this is interesting to mention before to start about the notebooks in Visual Studio Code.
Yeah, so so what I have done is I've ran through all of the code samples within the MS Learn course, and I've compiled them into notebooks. So what they're called polyglots, which is also which is like a layer on top of Juniper notebooks. So what that means means that I'm able to mix together markdown content, which is like a syntax for writing out instructions. So for example, where you got the information about choose your correct data type, and also code, runnable code within that as well. So we'll try and use the console as much as possible, but I do have this on a public GitHub repo, which I can post later. So if you are interested in running these, you do have to install an extension into Visual Studio Code. I think it's called .NET Interactive. Off the top of my head, I'll have a quick look just to see, because I can't remember off the top of my head. But I'm pretty sure it's .NET Interactive to get that working. It means you get a little play button next to each of the samples, and you get to see the output, which is super cool. I've got a preference for using these. But if there's any sort of comments about, can you show us in the console app and stuff like that, then by all means post that in the comments, and we'll switch to that experience so it's a bit more familiar. But I think during the initial stages of this talk, we'll just show you what the differences are between the certain values, just so that you can see how what the outputs are. So it's more about the code than it is about how we run it, if that makes sense.
Yep. And for this case, we can see our first example. In this case, for example, if we want to see, hey, for the integral types, the range of numbers that we can consider here. For example, we have some types here, like is byte, short, int, long, and we can see here, like, hey, what is the mean value that I can store in this attribute, for example, and or the max value. So we can see here the range, for example, in s byte. Hey, from this value to this other one, and something similar by short or int or a long. So in this case, it will be depend of the range that will we need to store our data. For example, if we have um, a, a value, a low value, we can consider, for example, s byte. Or if we need a long value, we can use this other type of data.
Yeah, and it's important to choose the
Mhm.
right variable for the types of data that you get in. So you enable certain features within C# to help you perform certain operations against that type of data. So, for example, mathematical operations against integers and numbers. So that's int, your longs or doubles. You can perform the math operations against them. But if you had a series of strings, for example, which you then start to perform math operations against, it operates in a different way. So it's important to ensure that the data type is appropriate for what you're storing in there. That makes sense.
Yeah. Also, if we want to improve the performance in our applications, it's important to consider the type of data here.
Yeah, indeed.
Yep, we can consider something similar here for these um, different types of values. For example, if we just need, like, this is like a positive numbers, right? From 0 to the other numbers, we can consider here, for example, byte, u short, u int, u long, with a similar behavior, but starting from 0 as a possibility to store the value in this type of data.
Yeah, that sounds good. So if you need positive numbers, then
Mhm.
unsigned integers and shorts and things like that is definitely the way to go, which is super cool.
Yep.
So,
So we have not just like integral types, we can consider other type of numbers, for example, to have decimals values. And in this case, we can consider float, double, and decimal to store this type of data as well. And as a similar exercise, you can see here, for example, the mean and the max values here. For example, for the float value, in this case, it has like a 6 or 9 digits of precisions. The double, it has a little more with 15 or 17 digits of precisions, or the decimal is the most complete data type here with 28 and 29 digits of precisions here.
do you
So
Daniel, do you have any examples of applications you've written where you need different levels of precision for your code?
Yeah, in this case, for example, we can consider this if we are handled scenarios with money, for example. $3 with 55 cents. We can storage that, for example, in a float because we just need like 2 digits of precision here is the low type.
Yeah.
But there are other scenarios like, for example, timing in IoT scenarios. For example, we need like precise times. This is another scenario, for example, that we can consider. Do you have another one?
No, I don't. I don't have any examples. I tend to use decimals more than anything, but it's possible that in my early days of using the code that it probably wasn't the best data type to use in some cases. But every day's a learning day, so yeah, it's all good. It's all good.
Yeah. And to see another scenario, we can have like a reference type of data, as you can see here. In this
Yeah.
case, to have this type, we can also consider arrays, for example, and C# string data types. In this case, 200 characters, as you can see here. For example, to storage like a hello world attribute and then show it in the console application, as you can see here.
Yeah. Do you want to just step up a bit actually for the intro examples? I'll just talk through a bit more detail there because there's a few points in there that we need to. You're able to scroll up a bit more, so it shows
Yep.
So this is what's happening there. So we'll look at the top line is it's declaring that data is a type of it holds integer numbers, so that's whole numbers. And those square brackets indicate that it is an array, which means it holds more than one of that number. And then when you go down to the middle line, you've got you instantiate that. So with the new int3, which is the size of the array that you could then use as well. So you can actually specify how big that array is and how many items you're planning on storing. So it just sort of breaks down further. So this is just a data will hold four items, isn't it, of data for integers. If that makes sense. So one other thing to bear in mind as well is I said 4 items there, and it says 3 on the screen, right? So arrays start at 0. Just bear in mind. So 0 is, yes, I've seen a comment on that. Yes, you could have done that in one line, but stepping through the examples here, with the array, they start at 0. So 0 is like an item. So you got 0, 1, 2, 3, which is actually four numbers that's going through. That makes sense.
Yep. And in this case, this is like a general overview about the data types. But the most important thing is that we can do with these like attributes in the other sections of the presentation.
No, I saw the comments coming through, so that's absolutely right. Yeah, the readability is quite important in code. Try and keep your code as readable as possible. The clearer the better. But there may be some cases where you do need to separate them, but you're absolutely right. In the essence of an example, we were just stepping through the parts, if that makes sense, to make that in line. But like the bottom line of line 3 of the integer series is probably what I would go for if I was setting that up. So absolutely right, Bruno.
Yeah, it's so easy to read. And greetings to Bruno. Hello.
Cool. Should we get back to the slides? Switch over. So there are other types, but if you're in doubt, stick with the basics. So stick with your integers, your strings, and try and focus on the basic examples that you've got here. You could make your own versions of int and decimal and boolean. I wouldn't. C# provides all that for you. They're there to be used and things like that. So absolutely stick to that. Stick to those basic types when you're working with data within your code as much as you can. There are scenarios and nuances and things like that where you may need to change or divert to other types, but for predominantly your code will use these main ones as examples.
Yeah, but in a general way also, for example, I have some notes here. Int for most whole numbers. Yeah, in many cases we were creating new variables or attributes with int word, as you can see here. In the industry, many cases. Decimals for numbers representing money, because in a general cases we just need like 2 digits after the principal number. For example, $2 with 25 cents. We can handle it or storage this value here. The most common type as well is the Boolean type for true or false values. For example, we can have something like this is this. Mhm.
I was going to say, does something exist? So
Yeah,
whether that be that tends to happen a lot in my world with SharePoint. Does this value exist or not? Does this thing exist or not? And that crops up a lot. So, and that the output of that is, does it exist? Yes, true. So there is certain representations in other languages for true. So you've got true, you've got yes, and you've got one, all represent the positive value, and then you've got false, which is something doesn't exist. So 0, no,
yeah.
and false.
Or if something is activated or not. Your credit card is activated or not. This is a Boolean type.
Yeah, true. I hope. I don't want to go to the shop and find out it's not activated. No. This Boolean is definitely going to go for true.
Yeah, and the other value is a string. Probably the most common attribute in this case, because for many scenarios we need string values. For example, if we get information from other systems or other applications, most of the time it will be as a string value, and in the future we need to perform some operations to convert, for example, that string to another value, for example, int or decimal or Boolean. But this is for the other section of this session. So this is in a general way about the basic of the types.
Yep.
And we can consider another like a complex type for other situations, because we can consider other type of data. For example, byte for a specific.
Yeah, you can byte when you're transmitting data, don't you? You receive it into a byte array until it's received by a target system, and then you can do that manipulation, or you're working with image data or complex data like that. So if you're like handling images, they're not stored in a number or a string. It's stored in a byte array, for example.
Yeah. Another example is the double type. For example, for building or science purposes, we can consider that, or in IoT scenarios, or in games, is usual to use the double because we need a precision of the values here. But there is also another type, in this case, data time, to handle of the date and hours to store that information, and that is usual to use, for example, published date of an article, for example, or
how long ago something happened, or how long has it been since I paid off my credit card, stuff like that.
Yeah,
that's time span, actually, isn't it? Time span is when When did I pay off my credit? Oh no, it's several months, and the interest is going to be racking up.
So it's very common have this type of data time, and some operations with this type of data, and also time span to, for example, something similar to have like years, months, days, hours, minutes, seconds, milliseconds, but that is for a specific scenarios, probably not for the credit card. But just for other scenarios, if we need a precision, we need or we can consider this other type time span
Yeah,
for a
yeah,
special situation.
cool. So there is a link on the screen. Sorry, to the learning module. So in MS Learn, so you can go and complete that section of the module, and then you can get the points for that. I love the fact that you get the XP points when you do each of the section. I think I'm up to like 16,000 or something over the year. So even experienced folks like myself are constantly on MS Learn. Tech changes, so once you start learning, you never really stop learning. So even after 18 years of working in tech, I obviously I'm around that long, but certainly I've been racking up the points, going through certifications myself. So go ahead, go collect those points, and then you can get those certifications, and you can sort of socialize your successes as well, and things like that.
Yeah, I totally agree because it's a good way to start or develop our skills in different types, not just in C Sharp, but in other scenarios as well, like Azure AI, business application as well. Many scenarios that you can contemplate. But in this case, this first part of the session, in this case, shows the correct day type in your C Sharp code is available here in this Microsoft Learn model as
Yeah.
part of the learning path.
Yeah, and there's a little knowledge check at the end of these as well, just to reinforce. It's not like exam conditions or anything like that. It's just to
Mhm.
reinforce, what you've learned. Have you covered, a couple of questions and things like that, which is super cool. So
We are ready for the next part.
next part. So
Yeah. If we
so
have data
go on.
types, yep. If we have data types, we need to perform some operations to, for example, convert a string to int into a string. And in this case, we will see how to convert data types using casting and conversion techniques in C Sharp.
So this is a good example of
Mhm.
trying to cast one data type to another. So on screen there, you've got a block of code within a console app. So you've got an integer that starts with 5, and you've also got a string that's 5. And then you try to add those values together, but the compiler says no. Computer says no, right? Because one of them's an integer and one of them's a string. Now, strings, yes, you can, in Unicode, you can have numbers, letters, emojis, whatever you like, really,
Mhm.
um, uh, within the sort of Unicode area. But when you try to perform certain operations on this, it doesn't recognize string as a number, so it can't perform that sort of math operation, and that's why you get that warning in your your sort of console application. So what you would need to do is cast string or str that's shown on the screen there to something that it can then apply and perform that math operation on that.
Yeah, in this case, the general idea is like try to change the values data type to in another one. So we have some ways to achieve that. If we go to the next one, we can see that we can consider like 4 ways to convert out data types. So the first one is implicit conversion. In this case, we don't have or we don't need to do anything because like the compiler handles the conversions. Um, so the first thing is try to do that. Okay, the compiler can that conversions, but there are other scenarios that we can do that because we need like put like a explicit conversion or implicit conversion to say, hey, we want to convert this type of data on this other one. So we have other scenarios here.
So, for example, converting that
Mhm.
str as we saw previously, that string, into a number, with int brackets around that, just so that you're then casting that over to that integer data type. If that makes sense.
Yeah. For example, about this cast, we have the option of explicit conversions to do that cast in that that casting operator. Sorry, I don't remember the name in English. That symbol. But yeah, you can put like in that casting operation. Hey, I want to convert this like to int as that example that you can see here in the screen.
Yeah.
So, but not all the times, but we can do that. In other scenarios, we have like an implicit conversions or narrowing conversions. In this case, we need to convert the value uh, and provide more information of the data type that we need to convert. Or in another scenario, we can consider like a helper classes, like a functions to convert this type of data. For example, there are some complex data like data time and objects in a general way, and we need to use helpers or use other functions. But in this case, if you are agree, we can go to some examples and see this in detail.
Right. Let's see a demo. So I'm just going
Demo
to
time.
bring my console app on screen. Oh, okay, you've got it on your screen. That's good enough. So to talk through the first one, so we've got the. Are you able to zoom in a little bit? I think it's a little bit small, if possible. So the first block of code you see on the screen there, you've got an integer called first, which is
Mhm.
2, and then you've got a string representation of second, which is a representation of 4. Now 4, these are different data types, so we would expect to see the compiler throw an exception at this time.
Mhm.
So it will blow up
If you
because
go,
it can't
mhm.
convert those types.
Yeah, and this case is because we have strong types in C sharp. In this case, the values or the attributes are always with its type. In this case, hey, this attribute is the type of int, this other one is a string. So always we need to like specify the type of the data for the attributes. And in this case, it's not possible like, okay, have this conversion to a string to int. So we need to contemplate another scenario here. For example, instead to have the int value, okay, we can have the result as a string value. But the issue here, as a traditional issue in all the language programming languages, is, for example, okay, we have the int value first with the value 2, the string second with the value 4, and if we try to join these two values, we'll have the result as 24.
So this is a good example of that
Yeah.
implicit conversion where the compilers automatically figured out that first it can be converted to a string. So that
Yeah.
basically first will then become a string, and second obviously is already a string. And then I'll add those two numbers together. Obviously 2 plus 4 is not 24. If it is on your computer, then there's something very wrong with your computer. So what it has done is it's joined those two numbers together to form that result, and that's not what we're after in that sort of math operation. But it's a good example of what can happen if you don't if you don't convert your data types properly, or perhaps you've got some weird bug in your code and you're trying to figure out what might have happened. Um, but yeah, that's that result. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's the reason because we need to perform a conversion. So we can consider another example here about decimal values. Uh, for example, we have an int value here, and we show the value in the console. Okay, we will have this value. If we have or try to convert this into decimal, we can do that. Uh, this, but in this case, it's important to consider probably the loss of information. When we try to convert information, in this case, we need to consider also the decimal values, right? So in some cast, as you can see here, for example, we have a decimal with this value. We can show the decimal here, but if we try to convert this decimal to int value, we will lose like this value here to have
Yeah.
like just the int value.
Yeah, because the decimal has more information, has that 0.14 that the integer doesn't support. So when it converts, it has to go,
Mhm.
which is where you need to then perform that cast.
So in this case, okay, it works. We are converting the type to decimal to int, but it's important to consider the type of the conversion here to consider that information. So in this case, we have this decimal, for example, with this all value. And if we want to convert this to float, uh, attribute, probably this is a better attribute. But in this case, we will have a result like this with this um,
Yeah, so
with
we've
this
got
type. Mhm.
these additional decimal point numbers in decimal,
That one.
but you
Mhm.
don't get in float. So it means that when you're converting from decimal, when you're casting from decimal to float, you lose that precision. You lose that 0.89 or 89 part of the decimal in your float. So you do lose that 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 part of it. It's small. So this is an example of narrowing conversion because you're reducing the amount of reducing the precision on the casting when you're doing that.
Yep. And also, uh, in this case, we can consider like these methods or helper methods to, for example, call like a function and perform the conversion. For example, if you have these int values, 5 and 7, we can convert this like into string. For example, the first one, this is an int value, and you use the helper like to a string to convert this int to a string value. But in this case, we will have the same um, result because we are joining uh, string values. In this
Yeah.
case, this is not an int anymore; it's like a string.
Yeah,
And we have.
you'll see the two strings used a lot,
Mhm,
especially I tend to use them to death with the date
mhm.
time. You know, if you're trying to get out of that date time in a specific format, you find that you use the two string quite often to produce the output that you're after, and different that example is where two-string does operate in a slightly different way to this because you can control the formatting in that. Whereas here, this will just convert it for you to the string.
Yeah, and here is the most important part. In this case, to have like the real operation to some two integers here is this other um, helper parse. In this case, we have a string values, the same one, 5 and 7, and if we want to have the real operation, this operation, okay, we can convert this string to int with this helper method parse, sending the attribute, in this case the value, the string, and this other one. And the difference here is that we finally have uh, the result that we are expecting.
So one other thing that I'd like to point out here actually is because both of these numbers are in the strings. So what will happen? I don't know if you can just adjust the code. Just put a little A by that 5. What do you think will happen if we did that? So if you on the first line, you've got 5. If you add 5A, for example, so it's a letter, not a number. What do you think will happen?
Oh, that's a good thing, because probably we can get an error.
Yep.
This is not a number, and we can handle that with other helper functions. But in this case, it's just like int values.
Yeah. So it's just something to watch out for, that if you're converting strings, that if you're using parse to that if it can't convert that string over to an integer, it does generate an exception.
Yeah, and in this case, we can consider another way to parse a string to int values using convert class. It's something similar here, but instead to use this helper in int, we can use this convert class to call like a toInt and send the string value and have the result.
Yeah, so there you have that convert class to do that, which is super cool.
Another scenario that we can consider here is compare casting and converting a decimal into an int, because in this case, the most important thing is the value that we have. For example, we can cast, if we are handled money, if we have the value of $2 with 50 cents, if we cast this, hey, what happened with the cents, right? So it's important to consider that. In this case, we have this value, and this is trying to truncate the value. For example, 1 with 5, we have these results here as a conversion, but we can consider also like rounds up the value, for example, with this conversion as well.
Yeah, so if I'm paying out something on my credit card, I'd like it to round down, and if I'm paying interest on my on my bank account, I want it to round up. So that'd be sort of super cool. But yeah, something to bear in mind that because it's making that decision about which number, if I'm going from a decimal to an integer, which number do I go to? So it does that rounding either down or up depending on where it's going. So there is that kind of difference between the two conversion methods.
Yep, and also another scenarios like having these other types of conversions, casting truncates and conversion rounds up. Yeah, similar scenario.
Yeah.
And now we can consider like a more complex exercise. For example, if we try having a string value, in this case pov, and trying to parse it to int, we will have the thing that you said before. In this case, hey, you are trying to convert a string to an int value, and in this case we will have an error here because okay, it's not the right format, and we have this error here.
Yeah. So this is what I was trying to explain earlier, actually, with the integer. When you run the paths extension method, it expects the name or the input to be a number. It does not expect it to be Bob. Sadly you can't convert Bob to a number. But yeah, that's where it leads on to try parse. So the difference between parse and try parse is try parse will attempt to convert it, but safely provide an output whether that conversion has been successful, so that you can test a particular input. This typically happens when you're taking data from a third-party system. You may or may not know the data type you're receiving. You might receive a number, but there are some cases where it might be a string, and you want to make sure that you're only accepting the numbers really. And this is where try parse would come in, so you can test that name Bob, and see whether it is an integer or not. So rather than generating an exception, it generates a Boolean output. So true, yes, I have converted it successfully, woohoo, or false, no, computer says no.
Yeah, I agree with that. It's mandatory validate if we can perform that operation, because always we are doing that to convert strings to int values. For example, as we mentioned it before, most of the times we get information as a string value, and we need to perform that operation to convert to int, to double, or to date time. So we can use this validation, this try parse to say, hey, we can do this conversion. And in this case, for example, we have here an string value with this number, and we will have the result here. So in the condition is, if we can we try parse this value, so we can have the result. So we can show the result here. Else, in this case, we can't parse or convert this value. We will show a message like, hey, unable to in this case to report this value. But it's important to have this type of validations. In this case, we can perform these conversions and have the result here, as you can see here.
And that out clause you've got there actually does something special. So when it does try, it doesn't just go, hey, yes, it is a number or not. It gives you the actual number in the data type that you're trying to pass to. So it kind of does both things for you. So we're going to try that. Is that a number? Yes. Here is the number, so you can then do something with it. So you don't have to then go pass and to get the number. You don't have to do that sort of a second operation to do that. You've already got you can get that, and that's what the out result clause does, which is super cool.
Yeah. Also, I see a comment. This is a fast way to have this result, but if you want to debug the program, yeah, probably you can consider put this in another line to analyze that scenario. But yeah, most of the time we use this helper to perform this operation. Okay, to validate first, and if it works, have the result. So we can consider another example here.
So we've got measurements.
For example, we have an string value here. Okay, we can try parse this value again and show this specific result, or show the else scenario.
Yeah, so what it means is you're 50 plus result. It means you're able to perform that math operation once it is able to do that, adding that sort of 152 result. So and if it wasn't able to pass, I think it will still return 50 as a result. So plus nothing. So
yeah, but in this case we have this scenario because the int value can cast to the other type. In this case, with int value.
Yeah.
We have the similar scenario here, but in this case the value is bath. really bad. And in this case, the scenario will be here, like, hey, unable to report the misrent. In this case,
Yeah.
we can't perform the operation.
Yeah, and it's got that sort of that result. So I did watch a little bit of the last live learn session, which was very cool. I have this preference around curly braces around the if statement. I just wanted to call that out. Even if it's just one line, it just makes it a lot easier to read. And there was, I think Iris mentioned in the segment I watched that coding errors can occur if people don't fully understand that line just after the if. In some cases, can cause issues. So I'm always for curly braces, but yeah, that's just that if statement is just a check to make sure that there is a result that does perform that output, as you can see on screen.
Yep. And to finish this section, we have an exercise here. If we go to the slides
Yep.
now, we can see the challenge. In this case, the general idea is okay. We are changing
Yep.
here, and we have this scenario.
Yeah. So update the code here. I'm placing it with an array, looping the structure code necessary to implement the business rules for your logic. If the value is alphabetical, concatenate it in the form of a message. If the value is numeric, then add it to the total. And if the result should match, then the following output. If that makes sense. So within your live learn, you'll see that you'll see this challenge. So you could take that away with you and try and perform those operations. Now, in the live learn material, I recommend that you attempt the challenge because it's good time to practice. But there is the result on the next section. Try not to look. And in some cases, I was having a discussion with Daniel about this a couple of days ago. Be careful of Copilot. If you use GitHub Copilot, and I wanted to drop that in there, is it might provide the answer for you, right? And I'm kind of thinking that if you're doing these courses, turn Copilot off just so that you can run through and you can understand it without Copilot throwing stuff at you, possibly the answer to what you're trying to achieve. And then if you do have Copilot, then you can switch it back on afterwards. I use it, and I think Daniel, you use it quite a lot anyway in our day-to-day lives. I love the tool, but it is a guide, and that's what I. It's a very, very, very good guide. A co-pilot, as they say, it's not the pilot. So just something to bear in mind when you're doing these challenges. If you can switch it off, try and work it out, because you'll be more satisfied with the result. And if you get absolutely stuck, then you can see the answer of that exercise, and then you can learn about how it can be done, which is both cool. So you get best of both worlds there. And then when you've done the modules, then you can switch Copilot on and be happy and merry with its awesome predictiveness. Anyway, that's my 2 pennies worth. Anyway, you can do what you like, but I wanted to call that out while it was a potential point of discussion.
Yeah, be careful with
You can
that.
challenge me on that, Daniel. I'm absolutely fine with you. No.
Okay. In this case, according to the challenge, yeah, we have the solution here.
Oops, sorry.
And and it's interesting to mention, okay, the general idea is, okay, have the string values, join them in a single attribute, and the other one, in this case, the number values, perform the operation to join all of them. So in this case, we can see here a perfect scenario to cast these values. Okay, we have the initial string values in the solution. Then we can create a decimal attribute to handle it or storage the results there, and also or the same scenario for the message value. Then we can explore the values in data write in the string arrays and start operations in a for each statement. So we will have the decimal number or the string value. So if we can perform the conversion to the string to decimal, okay, we can add in the total in the attribute the new number that we have. Add the new number with the result that we have. If we can't perform that operation, we can add the string value to all the results, and the result we will have the next one. We can go to the or write a console dot write line statement and see the message result, in this case with the string values, and then the results with the total values with the decimal values, as you can see in the screen.
Yeah, and I'm assuming that the audience is familiar with for each loops, so it will keep going through each part of the array until it's reached the end, and then it will automatically stop and then progress on to the next next line. There is a like a for loop. There's that other way of doing it, but this is I find I personally I seem to lean more towards for eaches than the other one, and also var as well is like a generic variable name. So, for example, values is an array of strings. So the compiler knows that that's a string, so it can then infer that var is also a string because it's going through a series of strings. So var is a flexible way. I mean, you could actually change that to string, for example, and that would still work. But it's just something to watch because it's new. It was not something we've shown before. The var is, it can work out the data type based on what you're feeding into it. So, for example, because you've got these speech marks here, you could put var message. It's better, I think, for readability to actually specify string, but just to sort of point that out in this example because it's a good case.
Yeah, and we have another challenge in the next slide. In this case, to have something similar, but for this scenario, perform operations with number types. So we have a code here, and we can review this really fast according to the time.
Yeah.
Yeah, we have an int value, 12, decimal value, and float value. So the idea is update the code and have the same result as you can see in the output. So in the first scenario, divide value 1 by value 2 and have that specific result, in this case int value. In the second scenario, divide the value 2 by the value 3 and display the result as a decimal. And in the other scenario, divide value 3 by value 1 and display the result as a float.
And we're expecting this as the output as well.
Yeah, so we need to perform that operation. And we can see, in this case, the solution in the next one.
So just to talk through it, so the calculation is then performed here. So we've got that convert to that. So we do the brackets are sort of levels of operation. So what it's doing is it's value 1 there is being cast to a decimal. Then it's dividing by value 2. And then what we're doing is we've got these outer brackets that are then converts the result of this calculation here into an integer, and that will produce your result 1. For the second example, you've got value 2, which is already a decimal, divide by a value 3, which has been cast to a decimal, and the result is the decimal output there, which is 1.4, blah, 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 blah. And then you've got the final one where you've got value 3, which is a float, divided by 1, which is a whole number anyway. So the compiler can implicitly convert that, and then that result will be a result 3, and then that's that output there. So actually, that automatic conversion where I said value 1 is an example of a widening conversion, because you're actually taking an integer and converting it to a float, which is increasing its precision. But it's a whole number anyway, so it kind of doesn't matter. But it's a good thing to point that out.
Yeah, in this case, like a general way, the most important thing here is like have the same data types to perform the operations.
So we've got a question in the chat here about what's the difference between a float and a decimal. So it's more about the precision. So I think float's the smallest one in terms of the decimal points. So and then you've got decimal. Sorry, I know there's an overlap with terminology there. You'll get familiar with that working with Microsoft. But the precision goes a lot higher with decimal. So as you can see, float here, and it goes to, was it 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 7 decimal points there, and that, I'm not even going to count that, but
15.
The decimal was much bigger, which means you can do very much more granular calculations. So which is good. So if you need that absolute precision, so for example, if you're doing machining, or so trying to make something, and you need to do it point xxx of a millimeter or something as an example, because you're doing very fine movements in a motor, for example, then you need that sort of precision to be able to do that. If you need that as an example.
Yep, and with that in mind, as the same case like the previously section, you can find this information in the Microsoft Learn module to have the exercises and the challenges as well to, in this case, convert data types using casting and conversion techniques in C#.
Yeah. So let's just go through that. Burning through time. So arrays. Array.
Perform operations. Perform operations on arrays using helper methods. This is very useful because it's very common in your day-by-day work. When you create applications in a general way, you always be performing operations with arrays. And in this case, it's just like use functionalities or methods to manipulate the content in their arrays. In this case, we can find some helper methods like sort and reverse helpers to handle the sort of the items, for example, of the characters or of the elements in the array. Also, for example, clear and resize or split and join helpers functionalities.
So just to explain a little bit what a helper is, so you can have an object, so that'd be an integer or string. So an object that is actually the fundamental one layer below the in the line of things. A helper method allows you to bolt on operations to like a number. For example, that sort is a method that's been specified. These are built into C#. So you've got these methods because these are standard things that people do a lot of. So they've got there's a set of that out of the box helper methods. You can write your own. I believe that may be, I'm not sure, but I think it might be covered in the next module. So if you want to know more about helper methods, then by all means, sign up to the next series. We'll talk about methods, and hopefully they'll care for that. If not, check out the docs for helper methods, because you could write your own. So for example, if there are a specific set of operations you perform on arrays all the time, you can have a library of helper methods to help you perform these operations. But for now, we're going to go through the out of the box ones, just to show exactly how these work.
Yeah, and let's see a demo. Demo time. Yeah,
quick demo as well.
Yeah. In this case, we'll see the first exercise to discover the sort and reverse exercise. So to start, you can see here an array of strings. Yeah, and a general idea is like show item by item or string by string. But in this case, we want to sort the values according to the name. Yeah, and in this case, we can use this helper called to the array class to the method sort and send the palettes. In this case, the array with the strings. And with that operation, we will have the elements sorted in this array. So to end this exercise, we can perform an for each to show the sorted values. So as you can see here, we start with A, then with B, according to the items in this string. And in this way, we can perform the sort operation for this scenario.
Yeah, and that's yeah. So it's sorting the strings into the order that they come out in, as you see on screen.
Yeah.
So that's an example of the helper method performing that operation again. So if there's a type called array, and that operation is available to you. That's built into C#.
And something similar is to, for example, reverse the order of the items. So if we have a similar scenario here with this string and sort the items, A, then B elements, we can show the elements here, but then we can use like something similar functionality called to the array class, then use the helper reverse and send these array elements, but the difference is they are already sorted. So we will have something like this. As a first one, assorted, and then reverse it according to this order. And this is about to the reverse helper.
Cool stuff.
Yeah, and we can consider other helpers as well. For example, clear and resize. For example, to clear, consider the same scenario. These arise with these elements. And if we want, for example, to clear specific positions in our array, for example, okay, we can call to the array class, then the clear helper. And if we want, for example, hey, in the position 0 until the position 2, clear the elements. We can call to the clear helpers to delete those elements. For example, in this case, we will have something like this. Okay, in the position 0, it will be deleted. The position 2, or in this case, position 1, it will be deleted too. And will we keep these other two elements to clear the values in this array.
Yeah, and that's something that I mentioned at the beginning when I said that when we were specifying that data was in equals, I had the brackets with 3 in it, and I said it was 4 items. That's because 0 is an item.
Yeah, it's starting from 0 here.
Yeah.
As well.
Yeah, so B14 on that example is 0.
Yeah, this is about to clear a value, and in this case, of course, resize the array because we will have a different number of elements here. But we can consider also access to a specific value. So, for example, if we go here to the array elements in the position 0, let me run this. No, it's already run. We don't have anything because, okay, it's clear.
Yeah, so it's gone. It's
and
gone.
It's gone as well.
Yeah, so
so we can consider the same scenario here. Have this entry array strings. And okay, before to perform the clear, we have in the position 0 of the array this value, as you can see here. Then if we perform the clear helper method, sending the arrays, clearing from 0, or in this case, this value and this value, after that operation, we don't have anything here. Yeah, and, so then we can show all the values.
Yeah, it's been sliced out of memory. I should be careful with the word slice because that's a different language for the different different way of doing it.
Yeah, and this is something important to mention. The item is gone. So after that, we want to call that item. We'll have like a null exception because there is nothing there. And for example, if we code a method to or another functionality to say, aha, in a stream, parse everything to lower, we will have this exception because A, we don't have anything in that position.
Yeah, it's trying to perform an operation on nothing. So
Mhm.
then that's why you get that exception. So
Uh, okay, we can also resize the arrays to to have a better use of memory here. So we can consider the same scenario, the string values in array, clear the position 0 and the position 1, then show the values, and then we can resize the values. So for example, we will have here like an string, but uh, the size of elements will be 6 in this case. And we can, with that, we can add new values, for example, in the position 4 and in the position 5, and then show the results. For example, clearing the position 1 and 2, we'll have something like this, and the size of this array will be 4. And when we add two new slots, in this case, resize to have the array to 6 elements, we'll have all of them with the new values as here in the 4 and 5 position. So, yep, there are other ways to resize the arrays as well. In this case, we can remove elements. We have a similar scenario here. But in this case, let me see. We have the resize here. And then we can, hey, remove elements like says something like, hey, we don't have a size of 6 now. Now we have a size of 3 in this array. So we can resize in here with the same functionality, in this case with the resize, to remove some elements in this array. And the other methods that we can consider here is split and join. This is very useful for some scenarios to get a specific information in a string value, for example. For
yeah, there may be
example, mhm,
times where you need to split off values, into two separate variables. For example, separating the ABC from the 1, 2, 3. You may want to split that off, or in case of two char arrays, actually putting into individual characters.
yeah,
Then performing that reverse, which is super cool, which is useful to know for the upcoming exercise.
yeah. For example, if we have this string value and we want an array with that with those values, we can say something, hey, to char array, and then perform other operations like reverse, in base to say it, instead to say abc 1 2 3, we can use this helper to reverse the values. In this case we will have 3 2 1 cva. And okay, this is another interesting scenario. If we want to have this value in a reverse way but separated by commas, we can have something like this. For example, in the string value, okay, have this one, convert this like a value array as a shard of string. Then we can reverse the values here with this helper, and then we can join all of these values, because it will be separate with comma uh, symbol here, and have the results.
Cool.
Yep.
Should we go back to the slides? I'm just conscious of time. We've got a couple more sections to
Yep.
go
Just
through.
to end here, we can
Yeah, well,
consider something similar with a split functionality. In this case, if we have a string with arrays, split the values, for example, in this case with commas, and do like a for each here and show the separate values, as you can see here.
yeah, an example of using this would be, so for example, if you wanted to get values from a CSV file, comma separated value file, is a good example of performing that operation within that. Tends to happen quite often if you're trying to do a lot of storage of data into a file, and then you want to read that out and put that back into an array of items, for example, and do something with it. Cool.
Yep, something similar to check in those. But in this case, the most important thing here, if we change to the slides, is consider these helper methods to work with array functionalities. In this case, to split, to get the specific values in the array, or join, or go to specific positions in the array to perform some operations.
Cool. So, in the interest of time, I think because we're fast approaching the end of this, so what we'll do is we'll lightly touch on this, and then we'll jump to the next section. So there is a challenge as part of the MS Learn material. I suggest you go to that link and read through the operations you've got here. It's similar to what we've discussed around using those helper methods that you've seen there to then produce that result, and step through these the asks and see if you can produce that yourself. Again, if you can do that on your own, then have a look at the answer and see what the result is. That will help you out. So I'm going to briefly skip past okay, there was no solution. That's good. Just a quick summary. So we've covered arrays. They occur often. You'll use them often in a variety of scenarios when you're working with data. So it's useful to know how arrays work. And I've seen a few items on the chat. Yes, it's worth knowing some of the operations. The split the joins and resizing, how arrays work. What happens if you try to access or do something with the array when it's too small, that kind of stuff. So it's worth investing some time to understand those. So again, you can go to the MS Learn material for working with arrays, get those XP points, and then perform that sort of little knowledge check, and then you're able to move on to the next section, which is super cool.
Yeah, and here's a very interesting section about format alphanumeric data for presentation in C#. And that's important because we will usually have data input. Okay, we'll have this string, this in value, this general attribute. Then we do something, in this case, data processing, to perform the cast or conversion values or get some information from a specific position in array. But it's important also to consider the data output. In this case, the way that we can present the information in the console, for example. In the screen, we have an example, for example, to have like formats of a string, to say something like, hey, in this string, we have this position and this other position 0 and position 1. And then we can send some attributes. For example, the first string and the second string have that format, like a that join, but in the same string, and show that result in the console as a line, as a result.
And you'll find that if you're working with console applications, you'll use that a lot to try and, because there's no user experience with the console applications, you have to write that. So your user experience to tell the person that's running the thing is these console write lines, and these strings that you end up formatting say, hey, operation A is resulting in this, operation B is this, or whatever your application will do. So you'll find that you end up doing string formatting a lot in a variety of scenarios. So it's definitely worth investing some time to understand it, and they're super cool to learn about as well.
Yeah, in this case, this is the format. We have in the next slide like a general overview that we can achieve with this as a challenge. In the next slide,
Oh,
to
sorry.
review like, hey, we want to show like this example about a letter to Miss Barrow about to send him some information with strings and decimal int information. So if we have some attributes like you are seeing right now in the screen, like string values and int, decimal, and the other one, we can organize that information in the console.file line to show that information in the console in the console line. As you can see here, we can say send with that symbols, for example, the custom name, the current product, and send that information uh, with a string format.
Yeah, and this is actually fairly new to C#9 or 8, I think, where the dollar sign on the text represents stringed up format. Because back in the day, before they added that, you had to write stringed up format a lot everywhere on every single line. It's a lot easier to type one little dollar symbol and you're done, and then you can now do your formatting. So I'm very, very, very thankful for when they introduced that shortcut into the later versions of C#. Sadly, I spent many years doing console applications before that was available, but nevertheless, it will save you guys time when you're typing out your formatting. You don't have to type stringed up format; you just use the dollar symbol, and then it will do that. And also something to bear in mind as well, you've got the curly braces. I think that I mentioned this. So this is your variable name, new product. Wrap it in curly braces tells the compiler, hey, I'm actually calling a variable, which is this. Go and plop that into there, please, and then carry on with the string text. And you're free to put in whatever you like with within the string. Obviously, if you've got a new product or you've got gaps between them as well, you can reuse the same variables, or you can use other ones as well within that as well, which is super cool.
Yeah, and that's it in a general way that we can mention according to the time. If we go
Yeah.
to the next one, you can see that you can explore uh, all of this in Microsoft Learn. In this particular case, to use the format of the strings to show the results. So in this case, we can consider that. Also, for example, to padding and alignment scenarios. But in this case, the thing is show the information.
Yeah.
And
It's also worth throwing.
yeah,
I
yeah.
just noticed the backslash there. Is what happens if you're creating a string with a speech mark in it. And how do you represent the speech mark when C# will just end the sentence? So it's got that escape character that will tell the compiler, I'm actually putting in a speech mark. I'm not actually ending the line in the code. So again, check out this module. There's lots of little tips and tricks all over the place within that, and then again get those XP points. Woohoo! And then points you can show them off, build more points to your communities and your friends and stuff.
Yeah. Also as a practice to achieve the certification.
Indeed.
Yeah, and the last section is about how to modify the content of a string using built-in string data type methods or helpers in C# as well. So in this case, we have a similar situation like before. We can consider some functionalities or methods, for example, to access to a specific position in a array, for example, with index of or a substring to have a specific data in some specific positions in the array. Also consider it index of any or last index of to get the positions, or remove and replace functionalities to work in the arrays. So I think in a general way we can consider many functionalities or functions, but in the end it will depend of the scenarios that we can or we need to contemplate. Yeah. In this case, in the next one, we can see like a general idea.
Oh, sorry. Yep. Yeah. We've only got 5. I've just noticed we've got 5 minutes for the
Yeah.
session. So
This is the challenge that we can see in Microsoft Learn. But the general idea is like, hey, in the output, get just the value, the int value, and the other output, like have the rest information. So we can perform that if we go to the next one with these
yeah, we can
operations.
explain how it works. Yeah, that's cool.
Mhm.
Um, if I'd like to describe some of the operations that happen. So index of. So what that means is it's basically saying where in the string does span occur, right? So it then returns the number. So it looks all the way through the text and goes, hey, spans here. So I'm going to return the position, assuming it was like a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So it returns the position within that string of where a span occurred. And then I want to go ahead and look at the next instance. I want to look for where the span with this is HTML, so you need to end brackets with what you started with. So span end with the forward slash. So where does that occur? So you've got that. Whoops, sorry, my bad. You got that and where the position of that is. And what you can do is you can then work out where what that value is in between those two values, which is what the piece of code here is trying to do, is saying find me that, then find me that, then grab me that, because I know where that is, and I'm not interested in these 2 points, but I am interested in what's in the middle of these 2 points. And this tends to happen sometimes if you receive information from an API or a third party. They send you stuff in all sorts of formats. Sometimes it's HTML, sometimes it's JSON and a few other languages, XML
Or
maybe,
file, for example.
or
Text
text.
file.
Yeah, or text file. So there's many examples where you would potentially use this to extract out values, into a meaningful way, so that you can perform those operations. And that's what substring is that method on the input, which is all it is, to say, hey, I want to take that, and I want to take that. I want to grab everything in the middle of these two, the length of where these are. And that's what substring does.
Yeah.
Uh,
In
and
that
then
case, for to get the information, to get the information, the specific information, for example, that value and that data, right? In this case, have this output. In Microsoft Learn, probably we can see the information specifically to
right.
to see this more in detail. But in this case, that's it in a general way that we contemplate in this session to work with variable data in C# console applications. You can see the specific Microsoft Learn model for this path. And yeah, in
We're going to skip
Microsoft
past
Learn.
let's skip past the guided project. But again, check out the so we've come to the end of the session. So check out the exam on C# certification that you can get for this as well. It's worth getting to let people know that you are certified. This maybe set up as a LinkedIn account, highlight your exam certification for folks, so that you can get jobs and things like that from that certification. But if you need all the material for this, about the courses and also the other courses as well, there's a QR code on the screen here. You can grab that. You can then go to the website and then you can explore the other parts to this. So you're already part 4. Next week is part 5 to create methods, which is super cool. So just remember to register for that session. Okay, so it's this time next week at the same time. with creating methods in C# console applications. So part 5. We're almost at the end of the course, so I hope that you've enjoyed this, and good luck with your certifications, exams, and your future careers, because this is the start of a journey, and I hope you enjoy it and have fun with it as we have over the many years of doing it. So thank you very much. I don't know if Daniel, you've got any last words.
Yeah, it's amazing to be here. And just to add, this is a good programming language, C Sharp, because we can achieve many, many things with this. We have of course, many, many options. But at the end, it allows to work with .NET, and in .NET we can create mobile applications, desktop applications, web applications, or have other scenarios like
Yeah.
games, IoT solutions, AI as well. And yeah, it's awesome, all the things that we can achieve with C Sharp. And yeah, this is
And it's one of the top
a
10
good way to,
languages in the world, so
yeah.
it's worth knowing. It's definitely industry recognized. Yeah. So thank you, everybody. It's been great on the chat, so thank you for all the comments that have come through. There have been some really great questions, and to our moderator and host as well.
Yeah,
So
thank you.
very much for organizing these sessions. So I hope you have a wonderful day, and take care.
Yeah, thank you very much, everyone. If you want to stay in touch, you can find us in the social networks, and we hope to see you the next week in the other session, and see you in the future as well. Thank you very much,
Happy building.
everyone.
Bye.
Have a nice day.